This is the worst-case scenario for the Milwaukee Bucks. Damian Lillard, their biggest gamble and centerpiece of this era, just tore his Achilles in Game 4 against the Indiana Pacers. And just like that, their playoff hopes, and maybe their future, went up in flames. The Bucks are now down 3-1. Their season is on the verge of collapse. And what's even more terrifying is what this means long-term. Not just for Lillard, but for Giannis, for the front office, for the future of this entire franchise. Dame's injury isn't just some ankle sprain or tweak. It's a full-blown Achilles tear. That's the kind of injury that ends careers, or at the very least, changes them forever. And Lillard isn't 26. He's about to turn 35. That's a brutal age to face an injury this serious, especially for a player who relies so much on quick bursts and explosive movement. Sure, fans might try to bring up guys like Kevin Durant, who bounced back from an Achilles tear, but KD was younger, taller, and not as dependent on speed. He could still use his size and length to shoot over defenders. Lillard doesn't have that luxury. By the time Dame returns to an NBA floor, if he returns, he'll be pushing 37. And realistically, there's no telling if that version of Lillard will be anything like the one the Bucks traded for. It's devastating. Not just for Dame personally, but for the Bucks as an organization. Because when they went all in to get him, they were gambling their entire future on one thing: winning now. They weren't trying to build something slowly. They were trying to convince Giannis to stay. Everything they've done in the past few years was designed to keep Giannis from walking. From the Jrue Holiday trade that led to a championship in 2021, to flipping Chris Middleton midseason for Kyle Kuzma, and most importantly, bringing in Dame. They knew other teams were lurking: Miami, New York, the Lakers. Everyone wants Giannis. So Milwaukee had one way to hold him off: win. But now, the entire pitch falls apart. Because without Dame, this team isn't a contender. In fact, you'd be lying to Giannis if you told him otherwise. Lillard is out for next season. Not maybe, not possibly. He's out. And that means the Bucks have to ask themselves one brutal question: can they sell Giannis on a season where the second best player is Kyle Kuzma? This roster wasn't built to last. It was built to win now. And without Dame, they don't just fall short of title contention, they fall short of being taken seriously. There's no young core to build around, no draft picks to flip, no real cap flexibility. But Jay Johnson, one of the few promising young guys they had, was shipped off in the Kuzma trade. The front office didn't plan for this kind of collapse, and now they're stuck. Sure, the Bucks might still win games. They've got Giannis, they've got Lopez, Bobby Portis. Kuzma can still play, but none of that matters, because all of it is built around one man, and one man only: Giannis Antetokounmpo. And if he leaves, none of those players are relevant, because he's the only reason this team is still even somewhat competitive. And right now, the Bucks have nothing to offer him except a lot of what-ifs. What if Dame comes back? What if we swing another miracle trade? What if this aging core suddenly finds new life? It's not enough. Giannis is 30 years old. He's not waiting around until he's 33 hoping Dame's Achilles magically heals and they get back into contention. He wants to win titles now. And honestly, you can't blame him. This situation was already tough to sell even when Dame was healthy. The two never quite clicked the way fans hoped. The ceiling never really rose the way it was supposed to. And now, with Dame gone for at least a year, probably more, it's almost impossible to justify staying. This is how dynasties collapse. Not with a decision, not with a press release, but with an injury in the first round of the playoffs. And it's not like the Giannis rumors weren't already out there. Every offseason, the vultures start circling. Trade proposals, media speculation, whisper campaigns from rival GMs. But before, it always felt like background noise. This time, it feels real. Because now, Milwaukee doesn't have a path forward. There's no version of this team that looks like a title threat next year. And once that reality sets in for Giannis, how long do you expect him to wait? Even if Dame does come back in 2026, what then? He'll be 37. The roster will be even older. The cap situation will still be a mess. You think Giannis is signing up for that? That's not a team. That's a waiting room. And you have to wonder, if the front office knew it would end like this, would they have pulled the trigger on all those trades? Would they have let Middleton walk? Would they have traded away every young asset they had? Because the Kuzma move hasn't exactly paid off. He's been inconsistent, and even when healthy, hasn't moved the needle. Meanwhile, Middleton might have been aging and injury-prone, but at least he had chemistry with Giannis. At least there was some foundation there. Instead, the Bucks are left with a roster that's patched together, fragile and expensive. Dame's contract is massive. Their flexibility is gone, and the only guy keeping them even remotely competitive is the one guy they're at risk of losing. And the injury bug hasn't been kind to Milwaukee. Since their title in 2021, It feels like every year ends with one of their stars limping to the locker room. This year, it's Dame. Last year, Middleton. The year before that, Giannis. It's a brutal cycle, and it makes it even harder for this front office to convince anyone that next year will be different. Because even if Dame hadn't gone down, let's say the Bucks lose to Indiana in 6 games, at least they could have gone into the offseason telling themselves, we were close. They could have imagined a scenario where a full training camp, a healthy core, and some minor tweaks were enough to run it back. Giannis might have stayed. He might have given it one more shot. But now it's over. This isn't just about a torn Achilles. It's about the ripple effects, the lost season, the aging core, the lack of assets, the uncomfortable questions no one in Milwaukee wants to answer. Giannis has to be looking around thinking, if I want to win, is this really where I should be? And you can't blame him if the answer is no. Maybe this was always going to be how it ended. Maybe Giannis was already fed up. Maybe the injury just sped things up. But no matter how you spin it, this feels like the start of the end. The Bucks went all in. They pushed their chips to the center of the table, and in return, they got one healthy postseason game from Dame. One. And now they're staring down a future without him, at least for the next season, if not longer. And once you remove Dame from the equation, what's left? A roster that can't contend. A star who's running out of patience. And a franchise that might have already played its last meaningful game of the Giannis era. So where does Giannis go from here? That's a question for another video. But what we know now is this: the Bucks gamble failed. And the cost might be their entire future. Because sometimes a single injury doesn't just take out a player, it takes out a dynasty.